The tiny apartment smelled faintly of instant noodles and fabric softener. Worn textbooks, cracked teacups, and a laundry basket that never seemed empty filled the cramped living room. At the center of the chaos, Mia sat cross-legged on the thin mattress she called a bed, mending a loose button on her only cardigan. Her sister, Clarissa, stood in front of the mirror, spritzing on a cloud of expensive perfume that Mia could never afford. I don't have time for this," Clarissa groaned, tossing her long hair. "Some family friend set me up on a blind date with a CEO. Can you imagine? As if I'm going to waste my evening babysitting some stiff businessman." Mia didn't look up from her sewing. "Then just cancel. Cancel." Clarissa spun around, eyes flashing. "Do you know what kind of insult that would be to father's business partners?" No, it has to be handled delicately. And that's where you come in." Mia blinked. "Me?" Clarissa smirked, plucking a silky lavender dress from her closet and throwing it at Mia. The fabric slid across Mia's lap like water. "You'll go in my place. Just smile, act polite, and then tell him you're not interested." "Easy." Mia held the dress up against herself. It was stunning, delicate embroidery, soft as a whisper. On Clarissa, it looked like it belonged. On Mia, it would be obvious she was a stand-in, a poor girl pretending to belong in a world too polished for her. She shook her head. "I can't. Look at me. I don't even have proper shoes." Clarissa's gaze hardened. "You owe me, Mia. Who covered your tuition last semester? Who pretended to be you when the landlord came knocking about late rent?" The guilt stung. Mia lowered her eyes. "Fine." An hour later, Mia stood in front of the restaurant, her heart hammering. The building gleamed with golden lights, tall windows revealing elegant chandeliers inside. Guests stepped out of sleek cars in glittering gowns and tailored suits. She felt painfully out of place in borrowed silk and her scuffed old heels, the only pair she owned. Inside, waiters moved like dancers, balancing trays of crystal glasses. Mia followed the maitre d', every step echoing her nerves. Her palms were damp. She clutched the strap of the tiny clutch Clarissa had shoved at her. At a table near the window sat a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair neatly combed back. His suit was immaculate, but his expression was sharper still, cool, unreadable. His gaze lifted the moment Mia approached, pinning her in place. For a second, she considered bolting. But Clarissa's voice echoed in her head. "Just smile, act polite." So she did. Mia forced a smile, hoping he couldn't see how her knees trembled. The CEO's eyes narrowed, as though he already knew she wasn't the woman he was supposed to meet. And just like that, her night as a substitute began. Mia slid nervously into the chair across from him, praying her hands wouldn't shake as she reached for the menu. The man before her radiated authority even in silence. His gaze was steady, assessing, as if he was used to looking at balance sheets and people with the same cold precision. He broke the silence first. His voice was deep, controlled. "You're not what I expected." Mia's stomach flipped. She gripped the edge of the menu tighter. "Of course I'm not. You were expecting Clarissa, the polished, perfect daughter." She cleared her throat and muttered, half under her breath, "I didn't expect you either." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, but it vanished so quickly Mia wondered if she'd imagined it. The waiter appeared, rattling off the evening specials in French. Mia's mind blanked. She had no idea what half the words meant. When the CEO ordered with effortless confidence, she felt the weight of his world pressing against her own, his wealth, his refinement, his power. Then, before she could stop herself, she reached for the bread basket in the middle of the table. The warm, golden rolls smelled too good. She hadn't eaten since noon, and nerves had drained the little energy she had left. She tore a piece off and popped it into her mouth, chewing hungrily. When she finally glanced up, the CEO was staring at her with raised brows. Heat rushed to her cheeks. "Sorry," she mumbled through the bread, horrified at herself. But then, an unexpected sound broke the tension, a small giggle. Mia turned. At the end of the table, peeking out from behind the man's chair, was a boy no older than 6. His eyes were bright, wide, and curious. He clutched a bundle of crayons in his tiny hands, and a coloring book rested on the chair beside him. Mia blinked in surprise. "You brought your son." The CEO's jaw tightened slightly. "This isn't a typical date." The boy leaned forward shyly, sliding a red crayon across the table toward Mia. She hesitated, then took it gently. His face lit up. He tugged his coloring book closer and pushed it toward her, pointing at an unfinished drawing of a castle. Mia's heart softened instantly. She crouched slightly to his level, smiling. "Mind if I help?" The boy shook his head eagerly, and together they began coloring. She filled in the rooftops with uneven strokes, while he giggled at her messy lines. She drew a lopsided sun in the corner, making him laugh harder. Across the table, the CEO watched silently. For the first time that evening, his carefully constructed composure cracked, just a little. There was something new in his eyes now, not just scrutiny, but curiosity. Mia, lost in the simple joy of coloring with the boy, didn't notice. She wasn't playing a role anymore. She wasn't the substitute sister or the poor girl pretending to belong. She was just herself. And strangely, that was the moment she made her strongest impression. The dinner ended with an odd quietness. Mia had expected judgment, maybe even mockery, but instead she felt only the weight of his gaze following her every move. His son had fallen asleep midway through dessert, head resting gently against his father's arm. Watching the CEO tenderly lift the boy, adjusting his jacket to cover him, had stirred something inside her that she hadn't anticipated. Now, outside the restaurant, the cool night air hit her skin, and she finally breathed freely. She thought she had survived the evening, played the role, eaten politely after the bread basket incident, even colored with the boy. She was ready to slip away and return to her small, cluttered apartment, to the safety of her quiet life. But his voice stopped her. "You're not her." Mia froze. The words weren't spoken harshly, but they cut all the same. Slowly, she turned to face him. His son was still asleep in his arms, his small face peaceful against the crisp fabric of his father's suit. But the CEO's eyes were fixed on her, sharp as glass under the street lamp. She swallowed hard. "I don't know what you mean." He took a step closer, careful not to disturb the boy. "Don't play games with me. You walked in there with borrowed nerves and second-hand shoes. Clarissa would never stumble over a menu. She wouldn't laugh at silly doodles or color outside the lines. You're not her." Her breath caught in her throat. The truth pressed at her chest, demanding to be set free, but fear kept it locked inside. If she confessed, she risked humiliating not only herself but also her sister. Finally, she whispered, "I'm just the substitute." The words fell heavy between them. For a moment, she expected anger, maybe even dismissal. But instead, his expression shifted. The coldness eased, and something softer slipped through, something she hadn't thought possible from a man like him. "The substitute," he repeated quietly, almost to himself. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze tracing not the silk dress or the painted lips, but her. The way her shoulders sagged as though she carried too much. The honesty trembling in her voice. The warmth she had shown his son without hesitation. Mia's throat tightened. She forced a shaky laugh. "You should forget tonight ever happened. I'll tell Clarissa you weren't interested." But before she could turn, he stepped closer. His voice dropped low, deep enough that it curled around her like a secret. "Maybe," he said, "you're the one I should have met all along." Her eyes widened. The street noise faded, the glow of the restaurant blurred. For the first time that evening, she couldn't think of a single reply. The man who had started as an untouchable CEO, untouchable and cold, was looking at her as though she wasn't a mistake or a replacement, but the real thing. And that realization terrified her even more than the lies she had told.